Fantasy Footballers Podcast with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Hey, everybody!
Hey!
Oh, you're dancing.
Hey!
That's
I sound like I'm doing the Russian dance.
When you dance like that, I almost don't notice Jason's absence.
Yeah, someone's got to do it.
Someone's got to dance. We're back again. We're the Fantasy Footballers. It is Thursday, January 14th, and we are here.
Yeah.
Two of us. Mike, the Fantasy Hitman Wright. I'm Andy Holloway. We're bringing you some good fantasy stuff today. We're going to be talking through the news, some of the things that have broke, news-wise. There's moving franchises.
Yeah.
Everyday stuff.
No big deal.
No big deal. Which leaves some really heartbroken people in certain cities. And I can't imagine having to go through that. But I have a good friend dealing with the Charger situation that's just, I feel terrible for him. We got the truth. No, Paul Pierce is not on the show today. We got the truth about fantasy tight ends.
Oh, you tricked me.
I know.
You tricked me. I thought Pierce was coming in.
No Paul Pierce, but we're going to break down tight ends, top 12 guys that finished this year, what their numbers look like, tell you the truth about them. Are they guys that you can rely on? Could you rely on them this year? Were they plug and play? Were they streamers? What are they going to be next year? We're going to conjecture about what they can be next year based on the numbers, based on what we've saw with our eyeballs. What else do we got? We got good stuff. I mean, that's the big part of the show.
And apparently there's some playoffs this week.
I have my my Cardinal jersey on.
I thought about wearing mine. I should have done that. I don't know why I did not.
In horrible irony, my wife's parents get into town from Wisconsin, and they just happen to be the world's biggest Packer fans, and we just happen to be playing each other when they come into town. So that's ends well, right? Rivalries and in-laws.
That's unfortunate for them.
That's right, buddy. Because I won't be doing the show next week if we lose that game. But yeah, let's go ahead and we like to read a review from the listeners every once in a while. We really appreciate your reviews on iTunes and wherever you're listening to the show. So every once in a while, we like to read some of the good ones that come through. Obviously, we've had a fun end to the year. A lot of listeners winning their titles. A lot of listeners having better years than they've ever had before. So we're going to read one right now. And Jason normally does that.
Yeah, I'll try not to let him down.
Can you handle it?
I don't have a choice.
Let's see what happens.
Reviewasaurus Rex.
This one comes in from Joe P. The title is "Dis Podcast Doe" with D's. Mm-hmm. I like it. I started listening to these guys in early September. They have great advice for fantasy owners, but it's more fun to listen to their banter with each other. Withstanding victories, the inception of David Johnson, Rule 86, and all the water bets have been highlights this year. With injury-riddled fantasy teams, Foster, Lewis, thanks, Fantasy Reaper.
Sorry.
And my real-life team being Romo-less. These guys kept the season enjoyable for me. Thanks, and keep up the great work. P.S. Handsome Fancy Beard Oil is the best. Go get it. Joe P., this is a man of wisdom. This is a man who knows what he's talking about.
That's right. He even threw in a little extra about the Handsome Fancy Beard Oil.
You got to keep the beard tight and right, and that's how you do it. I appreciate that, Joe.
Wait, you didn't say ripe, right? You said tight and right.
No, you don't want it to be ripe.
You don't want it to be ripe. That's a good point. All right. You want to check out the show? You want to leave us a review? Find out how you can connect with us? You can do it all from the website, thefantasyfootballers.com. You can connect with us on Twitter at the FFBallers. You'll never miss a thing. We record the show. The show's on YouTube, on video as well, and the segments are broken up on there.
So that dancing we were talking about.
Oh yeah, you can subject your eyes to that, which seems like a dangerous thing to do. And you can join our fantasy community at jointhefoot.com. Become a part of the Foot Clan, the listeners. Let's go ahead and get into the news.
News and notes from around the league.
The Los Angeles Rams.
Oh, St. Louis.
How's that sound?
St. Louis, I'm sorry.
Look, we're kind of connected to that whole St. Louis thing.
Yeah, we took your team the first time.
Yeah, we were we're Cardinal fans that came out from St. Louis. That was the first abandonment. Now you lose your team to L.A. That's kind of been the confirmation. The Rams are moving.
Well, here's what happened, actually. I read through the contract.
Oh, you did?
I read through the St. Louis contract.
I didn't know you could read.
Yeah, I can. We're improving steadily. We're at third grade level. Someday we'll get to high school.
There you go.
But I didn't find a clause. I was looking for it. They didn't do the official term. I'm not super keen and hip to legalese.
Right.
But I was told the official clause they should have included was no takesy backsies.
Oh.
And they completely forgot it.
It's not in as many contracts as you'd believe.
And so LA said, well, we want our team back.
Yeah. And
So-
we're gonna spend a ton of money building a giant facility and a multi-billion-dollar entertainment district and yada yada yada. And now we don't know if the Chargers are moving too. It looks very possible.
And so the official news is the Chargers have up to a year to decide if they would also like to move to LA and they can share the stadium that is being built, that is scheduled to open in 2019, I believe. It's the last I heard. So they would share a stadium. Then if the Chargers decline that option,
The NFL will subsidize with some cash.
correct, and they'll try and fix up their stadium in San Diego. But that opens the door for Oakland. Then
Right.
Oakland could move down to LA and share the stadium with the Rams.
Well, what we know now is that LA, one of the biggest markets in America, will have football again, and so we'll be following that. That'll be interesting for fans that are in LA and fans that are losing teams, and so what else do we got going on? We got a bunch of news about the upcoming Steelers matchup because you have Antonio Brown, D'Angelo Williams, and Big Ben that have all been through the grinder.
Yes.
So tell me what's going on with those three guys.
So it looks bad for D'Angelo Williams. He's back into walking boots. The word is that it is a very long shot for him to play this weekend. Antonio Brown is in the concussion protocol. Yes, Pac-Man Adam Jones. I hate to break this to you. You hit him in the head really hard, and he got a concussion.
That might be why he got suspended 3 games. Perfect.
No, that's Oh yeah. But I'm saying, like, he wasn't winking at you. That was a man who had just been concussed.
That was an involuntary
that could not
spasm.
control the functions of his motor skills. So as of now, it looks like he is on the outside. He could still clear. You never know with concussion. These with the symptoms, they come, they come, they go, they come. You know, it's very fluid situation. Now for Big Ben, apparently he has torn ligaments in his throwing shoulder. Now,
To the average human.
that's not where I was going with this.
Oh, okay.
Where I'm
Go
going
ahead.
with this is, if you recall, before last week's game, the Steelers were very tight-lipped, very secretive about an ankle injury to D'Angelo Williams. The entire NFL is generally very tight-lipped about injuries.
It's called being foxy.
However, whenever Big Ben has an injury, we know exactly what it is, allegedly. So it's just a funny thing that Big Ben is so open with his injuries.
Because of the hero. He's a hero.
Yeah, it kind of adds to the lore.
Yeah, it does.
I like Ben. I think he's a good quarterback, but, I mean, really?
Yeah, I don't know. So, torn ligaments. Yeah, he's probably going to play. I think he's going to play. Antonio Brown, hopeful. I think he'll play too. We'll find out about that. That'll make a difference to some of your playoff challenge fantasy teams.
Yeah, they are in trouble if Antonio Brown doesn't play.
And we're going to get our predictions in. But speaking of the concussion thing, I saw an article this morning that I was reading because I can read as well. And
Yes.
very impressive new technology with these helmets. Have you seen this?
No.
There are these helmets being developed. They have over $10 million in investment funding, $500,000 from the NFL, and they are flexible.
Wait, 500,000?
Of the $10 million, yeah. The
They
NFL's
don't
throwing a whole bunch of cash.
The $8 billion NFL is
Yeah.
throwing $500K to helmet safety.
I guess I glossed over that. I'm sure their money is spent elsewhere. Let's not disparage the big man.
It's put into new stadiums where they'll make more money.
Oh, that's where it goes. But these helmets were crazy because it showed a side-by-side comparison of them, almost like crash testing. And the outer layer of the helmet is these compressing I don't even know what the material is, but basically the whole outer layer compresses to stop the head from impacting, because helmet technology really over 40 years hasn't changed a whole bunch.
Right.
You had the leather heads way back in the day. Then you had these helmets that
bring
were
them back.
Yeah, bring back the leather. Hey, that might reduce concussions because nobody's going to want to knock heads then. Although people are a lot bigger now. That's probably not going to end well.
That's the Mike Ditka strategy.
That's not going to end well. But it was cool because it showed that, these could they have to be tested and everything, but they could have a big impact on reducing concussions, and they could start selling them to NFL teams soon. So, random tidbit.
That's good. I had a while ago I saw a helmet that was being discussed of it had kind of some shell of some sort so that if it absorbed a hit of a certain threshold, like something would pop off of it.
Huh.
So it was just instantly you knew how to check it.
I don't know if we know
It's
that.
like an airbag.
All over the field, there are going to be pieces of helmets flying off of things. The only other thing I'm going to mention right now from this list is that Devontae Adams has an MCL sprain, unlikely to play. And so in his place will be Abbrederis.
Oh, I like that.
Abbrederis.
Very nice.
That has to be good for the Cardinals, right?
Abbrederis. Yeah, you would think so. I think we should also throw out that there was a train of momentum going that Hugh Jackson would be the next coach of the San Francisco 49ers that has apparently come to a screeching halt.
It might have. Same with the Browns, though, because he left the Browns second interview
without a deal.
So we'll see what happens with Hugh Jackson. I like him. I think he should have taken over in Oakland. We talked about it on the show on Tuesday.
Right. Well, he did take over in Oakland. Then they
but wasn't that interim?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think he took over for like half a year in Oakland. And if I'm wrong, if you're out there in Oakland and you're thinking about your Raiders and you're hoping they don't move, then you probably can correct me and feel good. So in terms of picks for this weekend,
let's get them in. Let's get on the record.
Last week, you and Jason went 3 for 4.
Yep.
I was 2 for 4 because of those 2 insane games there. So let's go ahead and put them on record.
All right.
Let's start with the NFC.
We'll start with the NFC. I'm going Homer. I'm taking the Cardinals. That's an automatic.
Well, they're at Homer too, so that's not too bad.
Yeah, well, I think they're the better team. The Seahawks, the Panthers. This is difficult. I'm gonna stay with the Seahawks though. They kind of lucked into a victory there. But they don't have to deal with negative 20-degree type weather down in Carolina.
Yeah,
so I'm going to take the Seahawks.
I'm going to go with Carolina and Arizona.
All right, the AFC, I'm going to take the Broncos over the Steelers. There's just trouble for the Steelers, and they don't have a defense that can cover up.
In Denver.
Yeah, so I'm going with the Broncos. And I'm going to take the Chiefs.
Are you?
I'm taking the Chiefs, over the Patriots.
Could happen.
They are as hot as you can possibly get as a team. Their defense is great. I'm not overlooking into what they did or looking too much into what they did against the Texans because there was some bad spots of that game despite the blowout of the final score. They caught a couple breaks and their offense isn't great, but there's concerns about the Patriots where how we haven't heard much about it because it's been a couple weeks, but how's Tom Brady's ankle? How effective can he be?
Edelman coming back.
Edelman hasn't played in months. Gronk is missing practices right now. I just think that the Chiefs, if anyone can get it done,
11 straight wins
up in Foxborough, I think the Chiefs can do it.
I got Denver and I got New England. I'm going to just take New England. This is their pathway to the Super Bowl generally as they get that bye week. They come in ready in the second round. We'll see what happens. Let's go ahead and get into the tight ends.
Oh, the truth.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth.
You can't handle it, Mike. There's some interesting things here in the tight end numbers when we look back at the season. There are a couple of guys that jump off the page to me in terms of headline type of news for 2016. So we're going to get into that. Let me start with this. Mike, when you're a fantasy owner, tell me what you want in a tight end. And your answer cannot be Rob Gronkowski. Tell me what you're really looking for. What do we want as fantasy owners from a tight end position week to week?
From the tight end position, I want a guy who's going to get me about 60 yards with a chance to score every single week. That's the basics of what I want. And I mean, you want targets, but there's not a lot of tight ends out who get a high volume of targets. So you generally have a lower bar for that position. So if a guy can get me 60 yards and I know that he does score touchdowns, that's perfect for me.
I'm going to have once we get through the top 3 guys, I'm going to have a question for you.
Okay.
So remind me, because I'm very curious about it. But let's start with number 1. You know him. His name's Rob Gronkowski. Gronk was back this year. He had the scary injury, but he came back. His line on the year was 72 catches, almost 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns, 120 targets. And we brought this up on the show on Tuesday. We went through the top quarterbacks, and we discussed our perspective on them. We gave you some of the numbers behind the numbers. Yeah, that's right. There's numbers behind numbers. But one of the things we did is we talked about consistency level from a player. How many times did they finish in the top 10 this past year? How many times did they finish in the top 2? How many times did they finish outside the top 20? A dud game, a terrible game. Gronk's the number 1. Okay, he had 11 games in the top 10. He had 6 games as a top 2 performer at the position. Doesn't really get any better than that. He only had one what we qualify as a dud game outside the top 20 at the position. There's not much we need to say in terms of building up Rob Gronkowski. I don't think anybody doubts he's the number 1 number 1 quarterback, running back, and tight end.
We will get there.
Yeah, we're going to get to running backs.
The only question about Rob Gronkowski for next year is, would you spend a first-round pick on him?
And my answer is yes. A late round.
Later,
first,
so second half you would go first round?
Yeah, I probably would. Because he represents everything that you could possibly want at the highest level of guarantee. We've seen Gronkowski do it time after time. The injury stuff is still a concern. It's the same thing we're going to discuss about with Jordan Reed and some of these other guys, but Gronkowski just represents a positional advantage. He can win you weeks. Look, 6 weeks as a top 2 in the position. That means you're beating your opponent at that position every single week, pretty much. And so that's, he can take you a long way.
Yeah.
But the question is for fantasy owners are there other guys able to bridge the gap between, Gronkowski and the rest? Because if there are, they're probably a better draft value because Gronk's not a draft value. Gronk's just Gronk.
No.
He's going to be, you say, would you take him in the end of the first? I say yes. I also say that's also probably too high, but I would do it. You know what I mean? Like you're paying the premium for a guy. And so let's go ahead and look at how he did against defenses. Was there any disparity between how he played against top and bottom defenses?
So like we did with the quarterbacks, the top 16, bottom 16, it was a 6-game, 9-game split. And it's no difference.
So
there's a difference of a point. Gronk is locked and loaded. Every single week you put him out there.
All right, let's move on then because you already know about Gronk. So Gary Barnidge was the number 2 tight end in standard leagues. This is shocking. Now Gronk had 120 targets on the year. Guess how many targets Gary Barnidge had?
Well, I'm looking at it, so I can't guess.
Guess perfectly by reading it.
125.
125 targets.
That's a lot of targets.
More receptions than Gronkowski. 79. 1,043 yards. 9 touchdowns. And number 2 in consistency.
Off the waiver wire.
That
is glorious.
He had 10 top 10 performances. He had 2 performances in the top 2 at the position. He did dud on you 3 times, but it doesn't really get any better than that. And the truth is he played better defenses than Gronkowski did.
You know when 2 of those duds were, though? Weeks 1 and 2, when you weren't even playing Gary Barnidge.
I think when Cleveland didn't even know what they had in Gary Barnidge. And so that's a good point. You can throw those out pretty much. So from a consistency standpoint, he was as consistent as Rob Gronkowski. He didn't give you as many of those prolific performances, but he was rock solid.
Yeah, he was super solid, and his splits against top and bottom pass defenses are nearly identical as well. There wasn't a weakness, so to speak. There was not this is a tough pass defense. It was because he was getting peppered with targets. 125 targets is ridiculous. Now, Gary Barnidge is going to be very polarizing next year. Like, will we respect what he did? Will the turnover and the change of Cleveland be too much for people to buy in to Gary Barnidge? I think
will Josh Gordon coming back impact perspective on his target numbers because they didn't have anybody to throw to at the wide receiver position?
Well, they had Dwayne Bowe, they just didn't use him. I mean, it was really weird.
Oh my!
They still
goodness.
owe him money.
Yeah, Dwayne Bowe made cash for nothing this year.
I need an agent. I need Dwayne Bowe's agent. That's who I need.
You could have done what Bowe did this year, without question.
I firmly believe I could have done that.
Yeah,
I think he had like 30 yards.
I bet you'd take even half that money.
Okay, fine. I'll take half that money. But so Gary Barnidge, I mean, he's going to be later round as far as where do you think he goes? I'll give you an over/under. 8th round.
Oh, he'll be before that.
Really?
I think so. That being said, let's project him in the 6th. Would you rather have Gronk in the 1st or Gary Barnidge in the 6th?
It's not in the 6th because
You're saying neither though in that situation. But if you had to choose one of those two, would you rather have Gronk? If you're giving up a spot,
if I had to pick one of those, I'd go with Barnidge.
okay.
I don't have a problem at all with people taking Gronk in the 1st round. It's just not for me. That's not my strategy. But for Barnidge, I mean, who's the quarterback? You know, Johnny Football is going to be out. There's no way he's on the team.
So the variables are through the roof with Barnidge.
But
haven't done it over multiple years. So
right.
he doesn't have the track record. The quarterback changes, head coaching changes.
Yeah, it's the coach.
So yeah, you're right.
And it's probably McCown. I imagine the Browns will take a quarterback very early, or they're going to be in on a Robert Griffin sweepstakes, or they're like one of those type of guys. But I imagine it'll be McCown at least for the first couple weeks. And McCown was fantasy beast, man. So if you tell me it's McCown, then I'm perfectly fine taking Barnidge.
Well, they have a rapport. You saw how McCown performed with Barnidge. So number 3 was Rule 86.
Yes.
Jordan Reed. Look, more receptions than both of those guys. 87 for 952, 11 touchdowns, 114 targets. And really, you have stability with Jordan Reed from an organizational standpoint. You have a head coach that's coming back. You've got a quarterback that's almost assuredly coming back on a big contract or a franchise tag. And you have a rapport with him that's, I mean, we talked about this last week. Jordan Reed is the first and second read on a lot of these plays.
Yeah.
But
we already did that joke, so I was glossing over it.
But look, from a consistency standpoint, he was number 4. He had 4 prolific performances, including some playoff winning performances. He had 9 games in the top 10. He had 2 kind of dud games. But he played, all right? He played football, and that's the key. Rule 86 is what?
If Jordan Reed is healthy, you play.
That's right. He's a guy who's been on the injury report 20 times in his career. He's a guy who's missed 13 or 14 games in his career with various injuries. You had concussion problems, hamstrings, quadriceps, different injuries for Reed that gave you hesitation. But these aren't things that are really absent from Rob Gronkowski's resume. We just write it off because Gronk's numbers are, he gets a pass because his numbers are so astronomical.
Right.
So Reed kind of has a justification now. If his numbers are up there in the stratosphere, you can kind of deal with that stuff because when he plays,
he's great.
He wins you weeks.
And it's recency bias is all it is. I mean, you have Rob Gronkowski coming off of the knee explosion year. Comes back, he has a monster year, plays every game. Rob Gronkowski's not injury prone anymore because he played a full season. That's how we do it in fantasy football.
And it's true, and you kind of have to because at some point in time, these careers aren't necessarily incredibly long. Matt Forte used to get labeled that way,
Yeah.
So, but you're right. It's a recency bias, and now Jordan Reed, I think he's got more momentum than anybody heading into the draft next year.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if you have half point or full point PPR, Jordan Reed is a beast. I mean, because he gets 114 targets. He did miss 2 games, but I mean, he's putting up 9 catch performances. He had a week 7 against Tampa Bay, 11 catches. There's just not tight ends out there that are doing that.
No.
They don't get those targets.
No, and if you watch him, one of the things that impresses me most about Reed is his route running. He is really a dynamic route runner, and he gets separation. Now, this is the question I was going to have for you, and you kind of answered it, but these three guys, Barnidge, Reed, Gronkowski, next year, based on where you think they'll end up in the draft, who's going to be the best value to you?
I see Jordan Reed as a 4th, 5th round type of a guy, and 4th round might be pushing it depending on who's on the board.
Kelsey was in that range this year.
Yeah, and so Reed, I don't mind it in the 5th. I mean, you'll hear us talk plenty about how we draft tight ends.
No more shows from now until the first week of the season. So this is it.
But we generally there's that crop of 2 to 3 tight ends every year that you can take early and earlier in the draft. And besides that, if you don't get one, then you just wait. You wait a very long time. But Jordan Reed, I think, will be worth a 5th, maybe even worth a 4th. I mean, if he can be healthy, that's what it is. It's the health. If you know you're getting 16 games of Reed in the 4th round, that's a draft steal.
So when it comes to the comparison between him and the Kelsey hype before the season, though, isn't there something to be said? You said you can wait on guys, but you were a tweener with Kelsey, right? Like you rolled the dice with Kelsey, and I say you as in, a person who drafted him, not you specifically. You rolled.
I did.
I know. I guess you did.
I had him everywhere
because you were hoping you would get a Reed-like year from Kelsey, right? Talent-wise, it's there, but he was an example, in my opinion, of you don't have the track record behind the guy. You're projecting him forward. You kind of burned a 4th-round pick on Travis Kelsey,
Yeah. Yeah, when you took him,
is there a risk with Reed in the same category?
There is absolutely a risk, but what we've seen with Jordan Reed, this will be his 4th year. Is that right?
I believe so, yeah.
But when he's played and been, he's acclimated to the offense really runs through him, the passing game. Even when Griffin was the quarterback, Reed soaked up targets where Kelsey was a projection, so to speak, of a lack of weapons. You had Macklin come in, but besides Macklin, there was no one of name value that had had proven their talent, where Kelsey had. I mean, his metrics of yards after catch and everything. We'll talk about Kelsey in a second, but Kelsey was so there was a bit of projecting of improvement for Travis.
What's
Kelsey.
incredible is last year Reed played in 11 games. He had 50 catches last year. He had 87 this year. How many touchdowns did he have last year? Did you know this? Do you know this number?
Did he have any?
0.
Yeah.
0 touchdowns. He had 11 this year. There's always warnings with high touchdown numbers, but those don't really persist unless you have low reception numbers. So we're going to get to some of those guys here soon. Number 4.
there's someone very specific.
There's someone specific. Yeah, we're going to get to one guy. Greg Olsen, though, at number 4. Tried and true, right? Like, to me, he is the Jason Witten-esque type of just, you're going to get production from him. He's not sexy enough to probably go high in the draft.
He was last year.
Yeah, that's true because everybody else was gone in that passing offense. And but look, Olsen did it. 77 for 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns. You would have liked to probably see some higher touchdown numbers from him on a year where Cam threw for so many. So because of that, he was only the number 6 most consistent tight end. He had a couple dud games, a couple prolific games, and then he was pretty much a solid top 10 tight end week to week.
Yeah, and I think next year what will be interesting is where is he drafted, because like I'm saying, the shine on Greg Olsen, who had a very solid year.
We got to do a shine episode because that's such a dynamic in fantasy football that's ignored, where big names, new names, the Abdullahs, Kelseys,
right?
These guys because we're all shooting for the moon, right? We all want
you play to win.
You play to win. But yeah, Olsen will be he'll be 31 heading into next year too.
And I think he will be perfectly fine. I think he'll be a great option, and he could be even better than like a Reed value, because Olsen might drop to the 6th, 7th round just because of just hype and things like that. The stock market value of these players and the perception, where Olsen, I think, he should be very solid again next year. You do have Kelvin Benjamin coming back. Devin Funchess, I believe, is coming on. He'll be the the wide receiver 2, and we get to see some more of him in the playoffs, to verify if that's going to happen or not. But I think Olsen should be similar numbers to this. I don't know if he'll get 1,100 yards, but, the 70 catch range, 1,000 yards, it's very doable, and that's fantastic. If you get those numbers, if you can get 1,000 yards out of your tight end, you're very happy.
Yeah, you've got a very safe baseline week to week. He's not going to cost you games. Now, number 5 on this list, I've got some interesting numbers about him. He had the most receptions at the position. 94. He had more receptions this year by about 30% than he had. He had his last 2 years, 60, 63, jumps up to 94. 31 years old, Delaney Walker.
Yeah.
Now, I am very curious about him because you can craft arguments for players, and I feel like I could craft 2 narratives for him. I could do the narrative that is, look, stability at the quarterback position. Young guy that, Mariota looked to Delaney Walker. Walker was reliable, 6 touchdowns this year. The numbers have never been high. That's the most in his career. But seeing him jump 30-plus receptions and jump up in yardage there, I just don't know if they get Kendall Wright back. They had no stability at the outside position. Green Beckham kind of came on late in the season. What do you project for Delaney Walker next year? Is he somebody that you're very confident in? Is he somebody you're hesitating with? Is he somebody you'd like to draft real late?
Yeah, he's shaping up to be one of those great later round, 9th, 10th round guys.
Listen to the target numbers for the back half of the year. 10, 8, 12, 13, 5, 15, 14.
Good grief.
Yeah, 133 targets on the year, which led all tight ends.
Oh, man, and that's what you want. You want that opportunity, and I don't think that...
I feel like he's going to return to the mean.
Really?
I feel like he's going to return to that 60, 70 catch range.
I think he might drop back down to... What was he before?
60, 63?
Yeah, I think it would be somewhere in between the 90s.
It's going to have a lot to
60s.
do. I mean, look, they had no weapons at the end of the year.
Sure.
Wright was out for most of the back half of the year. They couldn't run the ball either. Their short passing game, he was the first and second read on every play too. It's going to be very interesting what develops on their offense with David Cobb, or do they draft a guy? Do they draft another wide receiver? Who do they sign, bring in? Who's healthy? Delaney Walker, though, you can't argue with the fact he got it done. He was the number 3 most consistent tight end. He's the only tight end who never once finished outside the top 20.
That's not too bad. And I think Walker will be drafted exactly where he was this year. I mean, just very late. Very late.
Nowhere.
Right? Oh, yeah. Well, I saw him drafted at a couple spots, but there was leagues where Walker went undrafted.
Yeah, and now he was a guy who also played better against worse pass defenses.
And I think that's a product of Mariota.
Yeah,
you
that
have
makes
a
sense.
Rookie quarterback. Of course, you would hope that they play better against a worse defense. Now, next year you'd like that gap to close, and so just to be a solid quarterback against everybody. But it makes sense to me.
All right, let's get to number 6.
Here he is.
All right, that's not really fair. It's Tyler Eifert. I sounded the alarm because there is one thing that stands out about Tyler Eifert compared to all the guys. Okay, so let me read this to you. Here's the catch totals from the top 8 tight ends. 72, 79, 87, 77, 94, 72, 74, and then there's Tyler Eifert.
So that's through the top 8.
That's through the top 8. Eifert had 52 catches.
Hey!
Here's the target numbers. 110, 133, 103, 124, 114, 125, 120. Tyler Eifert.
52.
52 target? That can't be right.
No.
That's got to be wrong. That is so
You
low.
did
I know.
These are good numbers.
I know. I'm going to vet it real quick. But the truth of the matter is he had
50,
so...
No.
No,
He
72.
50,
I'm sorry. 72. It was 72 targets. 52 on 72.
52 catches on 52 targets. Tyler Eifert, the best tight end in history.
The most perfect. He's got nice gloves, okay? He's got
100%
really good gloves.
catch rate.
No, but 52 on 72 is a great catch rate. That being said,
But 72 is very low.
very low comparatively. Yes, he missed 3 games. He had 13 touchdowns. That's why he's number 6 on the docket here. He had 13 touchdowns, and so the panic alarm goes off because Look, that offense is good enough for him to score 13 again. I'm not saying it's not. He's a red zone target. But with Eifert, you are buying into a standard league tight end type of guy, in my opinion. You're not going – if he doesn't score, he's not going to put up the kind of numbers that a Delaney Walker will give you baseline week to week. There were a couple weeks when Eifert was outside the top 20.
Eifert had a 0 week.
Yeah.
If you remember.
Right. And
he did catch a touchdown. It was called back on the logistics of a catch rule, but he had 0. He finished that game with nothing for nothing.
Well, and how many weeks did he have his production fully supported just by a touchdown?
Like a 1-catch touchdown game?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Because he had some lower catch weeks. Now, look, he's a guy that listen to this. Second half of the year, okay? Week 10 on, catches, 3, 3, 3, 0, 2, 0, 0, 4.
Well, it's
okay, he was
those are
injured
injury games.
Sorry about that. 3, 3, 3, 2, 4.
Yeah, that's
not a PPR production type of situation.
Nope.
But that being said, he had 3 catches, 2 touchdowns. 3 catches, 1 touchdown. So it's just a warning to you out there that my opinion is Tyler Eifert's not going to be on any of my teams because Eifert's name got big this year. The 13 stands out. And he's going to go higher than some of these guys we've talked about on the list. Who goes higher in the draft, Eifert or Greg Olsen?
Ooh, that'll be
close, right?
That'll be very close.
Look, I mean, Eifert or Barnidge.
Eifert will go before Barnidge.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of my point is that you have a little bit of you got upside with Eifert. Great offense, red zone, targeted in the red zone. Great talent. Obviously missed some games, so those numbers will be a little higher. Just wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah, it's good to keep these things in mind right now before we start sweltering the shine.
Tuck it away, pull out the drawer, file this away. Remember it when you start looking at these off-season trades. Someone comes and offers you, oh man, you want to go give me Barnidge and a pick to get Eifert. Well, be careful.
Right.
Be careful what's before you. So number 7, we talked about him briefly.
Zeus.
He was the shiniest of shiny. Travis Kelce. It's not a bad year. 72 for 875 and 5 on 103 targets. But he wasn't what you hoped he was.
No, the touchdowns were lacking. And the monster games, I mean, he gave you week 1 out of the gates. Well, he had a monster week. He wasn't in the top 2 because that was, if you remember, week 1 there was this really strange tight end explosion,
right?
Where Gronk I think had 3 touchdowns.
Eifert
had a couple touchdowns. Yeah. So Kelce wasn't in the top 2 technically, but that was
his only big week,
and it was you felt great. You felt great because that was a week-winning performance. Unfortunately, you didn't really get any more of those. He was solid. But the offense where you thought, or I thought, that Alex Smith would go to him more, that it wouldn't be the Macklin show, which it turned into. The passing game really became all about Macklin. It was just, it's a frustrating. It's not disappointing, but frustrating for sure.
There are guys that had so the next guy on the list is Benjamin Watson.
He had an
almost identical stat line, right?
Yeah.
When you look at Benjamin Watson, you don't have any feelings of disappointment. You don't have any feelings of discouragement.
You waiver wired him.
Because you waiver wired him. The numbers were identical. Look, Kelce was 72, 875, 5 on 103. Watson was 74, 825, 6 on 110. These guys were back-to-back in consistency rating. Watson kind of, Josh Hill, right? Got the offseason narrative in a lot of fantasy departments. And we said, wait, hold on a second. Look, he's not done anything. This guy he's not Jimmy Graham. And then Ben Watson came out and proved that he can still catch the ball at an old age.
Josh Hill did his best Tyler Eifert performance last year, where he caught the ball once a week, but it was a touchdown.
Now, Benjamin Watson is 35 years old. So I've got a new game we're playing for the second half of the show.
Okay.
And it's called Travis Kelce or.
Okay.
And so
I like it.
Travis Kelce or Benjamin Watson next year based on draft spot.
Oh, man. Based on draft spot?
35-year-old Ben Watson, young guitar-toting
It was the Donkey Kong punch.
Oh, that's right.
Just
That's
a
right.
reminder. Travis, where does Kelsey get drafted? I mean, he burned people, so to speak. So I can't imagine.
8th round?
Yeah, I would say 7th, 8th round is probably where he'll go.
Ben Watson will go undrafted.
Yeah, or very late. So, yep. If they don't make a move for a tight end in New Orleans, give me Ben Watson.
All right. Well, we'll keep it going then. So Watson was 8. Number 9 was Richard Rodgers.
Hail Mary.
Richard Rodgers.
Oh, he's getting in on that too.
I guess. 58 for 5'10 and 8. I feel like about half of the 5'10 came in one game.
Yeah,
But he
very,
he
very
had
close.
85 targets, and Richard Rodgers was he has a very cool name, and here's what it is. Tight end to a great quarterback,
Yep.
right? And some of the competition there fell away.
Yeah, absolutely. Corliss wasn't the guy. It looked like all signs pointed to if they were going to use a tight end in Green Bay, it would be Richard Rodgers, and that was the truth. That's what happened. But they just didn't use the tight end.
And Richard Rodgers is the kind of tight end that is extremely frustrating and the kind of guy I don't want to start ever. I don't think I started him in any league ever this year, even after his big game, because he had the most of all the top 12 tight ends. He had the most performances that were outside the top 20. Okay.
Well, every playoff week, fantasy playoff week, he had one catch.
That's not good.
No, that's
That's
not
not
going to
good.
get it
No,
done.
he had that monster week, which,
8 for 146 and a touchdown.
yeah.
So 146 yards of 510 yards came in one game.
And 50 of the 146 came in one Hail Mary, or however long that Hail Mary
Yeah.
play was. So it's just one of those things where Rodgers was fine. He ended up at number 9. I don't think he won a lot of people leagues unless you played him in that one special week. So from my perspective, Rodgers is somebody to shelf for next year.
Yeah,
Because there's 100. I think there'll be 5 other guys, 10 other guys undrafted that you can get that kind of production from. We just don't know their names yet, to some degree.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
So Travis Kelce or
there's-
Richard Rodgers?
Oh, Kelsey.
All right. So who's the next guy on the list?
Number 10. He started off slow. He had a preseason injury. We really liked this guy. The talent is there. The question was, could he get on the field? Could he improve his run blocking enough to get on the field more than 50% of snaps? Zach Ertz of the Philadelphia Eagles. And he put up a line of 75 catches, 853 yards, only 2 touchdowns. Now, only 2 touchdowns on 75 catches. That is a number that will go up. To me, when you combine Zach Ertz, his talent. Now, there's who's going to be the coach, which we didn't talk about it in the
McAdoo
news. Ben McAdoo
Love it.
is being linked to the Eagles, and I got very happy and excited for Philadelphia fantasy and sad for Eli Manning.
Right. Zach Ertz at number 10 here is the opposite of Tyler Eifert. Okay. And this is where numbers can lie. This is where you just look at how guys finished last year, and if that's how you draw up your draft for next year, you're gonna hurt yourself, because Zach Ertz is somebody who had high target numbers, 112 targets, came on big time at the end of the year. Look, he's not somebody who gave you a bunch of prolific performances because he only scored 2 touchdowns. But that was kind of the problem, right? Like, he had end zone targets. It just didn't happen. And we've seen this from years and years of fantasy football. Touchdown numbers are the hardest thing to predict.
Yeah.
And so, Zach Ertz, if you're targeting him a bunch and you're targeting him in the end zone, you know what? I'm going to take a guy like that. A guy who put up 853 yards. A guy who is a high PPR league type of performance guy. I would take Zach Ertz over Kelsey next year.
Yeah, I can get on board with that, depending on where Ertz gets drafted, because the hype machine for Ertz will build. He's a guy I can guarantee that's going to happen next year. And his season was, as a whole, was just average, but then the last 4 games of the year, that's when he really became a monster. It started clicking with him and Sam Bradford. So that's another question mark for Zach Ertz. Who's the quarterback?
Yep.
Is it Sam Bradford? Will he – there's no way they franchise Sam Bradford. You can't do that. But will Bradford sign an extension there? Will he move on? Will they have to Will they be in on the Robert Griffin sweepstakes? Who knows?
Now, when Ben Watson gets in his convertible and goes and picks up his friends, he picks up number 11 and 12 on the list. The midlife crisis crew.
And they what's the pee pill?
The pee pill?
The prostate shrinker.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what the pee pill is.
Well, there's the you reminded me of it because there's the commercial where it's the older gentleman, and they're in the convertible, and they like throw their hands up in the air because they're so free because they can tinkle whenever they need to.
So they're taking this pill.
Probably.
They're promoting it. So Ben Watson. Look, I'm talking about Antonio Gates and Jason Witten, who, by the way, Gates is 35, Watson's 35, Witten's actually 33. I love Witten to bounce back next year because he didn't really have a bad year. He was 77 for 713 and 3 with nobody at quarterback.
Yeah, and Witten was a guy who I had my eye on pre-draft. It all fell apart with no Tony Romo. That is for sure. But I don't want to skip Antonio Gates.
No,
He is interesting because we don't know.
he did only play in 11 games of 16, so his numbers are dwarfed because of that.
Right. I mean, 4 of those games were because he was taking some other kind of pill.
Maybe it was just the prostate thing, and it just came up on a test. What were the old Gates jokes we had at the beginning of the year? I don't even remember what those were.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Different kind of PEDs. There were some PED jokes.
Oh, okay.
It was a long, long time ago, 160 plus shows ago.
No, the PED joke was the performance-enhancing defense.
That's what it was. Well, there you go. So Antonio Gates.
So his numbers were, but he is off contract. Will he retire? Will he re-sign? Will the Chargers move to LA? Does that factor into his decision? So we're not even sure that he'll play next year. I think he will. But here is a problem with Antonio Gates when you look at his splits. And the reason we haven't really talked about the splits of top 16 versus bottom 16 is because for a lot of these guys, the numbers are not interesting, where they're just kind of good. We did miss over Richard Rodgers, who really exploited
Bad
the bottom
defenses,
half of pass defenses. His top 16 pass defense numbers were bad. But Antonio Gates, he was the same. Versus the top 16, he was only putting up 50 yards and no touchdowns versus bottom half pass defenses up to 67 yards a game, averaging a touchdown a game. So he really took advantage of the bad pass defense. Now, San Diego we've talked about them. They're interesting.
We talked about him with Rivers on the last show.
Where the team was just hurt. Everybody was hurt. Everybody. The offensive line, Phillip Rivers didn't have protection. Keenan Allen went down. So they didn't have really big passing weapons on the outside. So Antonio Gates, he could still absolutely be consistent next year. I will not be spending any type of high draft pick on him, but if you're waiting on tight end, Antonio Gates is there in the 10th, 11th round. Yes.
Look, if you want to talk about shiny versus old busted or whatever you want to say, Gates and Witten are 11-12 here. 13 and 14 in our honorable mentions here are two guys that I'd rather have over either of them, and that's Julius Thomas and Eric Ebron.
Over whom?
Over Gates and Witten.
Really? You'd
Yes.
rather have Ebron over Gates?
Yeah, I would. But again, this is what we're talking about. We're going to have that shine discussion multiple times because the idea of a guy here's what you do know. At least I think I know. I don't think Gates is in his prime. I don't think Gates is improving.
He's got to take the tinkle pill, so of course
he's got to take the tinkle pills. Look, those guys aren't in their prime. There's a chance that Eric Ebron comes into his prime. We saw what Stafford was in the second half of the year. We saw that Ebron could put up good performances, top 10 performances.
Every once in a while, he could. Sure.
Okay, I might be wrong. I would take Julius Thomas over Antonio Gates.
That I could get on board with.
Because he had 5 top 10 performances. He missed some games. He was at least a difference-making type of guy, but he's another guy that's really touchdown dependent too, historically. So those are two guys to keep your ears out for. See what they, they both have more optimism to me, more upside, than a Gates or Witten or Watson. I would take those guys over with the upside, because what's the worst case scenario? I go out and I find myself a Richard Rodgers type of guy.
Yeah, well, gross.
Let me roll the dice with Julius Thomas in the last, few rounds.
I will take all of those players over Richard Rodgers next year.
Okay.
As I'm not having any of that Richard Rodgers.
So let me throw a couple tight end names out before we close the show down, just to get your reaction to them. In fact, you can give me a few words about each one. How about that?
Okay.
Zach Miller.
Zach Miller. Chicago Zach Miller.
Yep.
Very interesting.
Okay.
Very, very interesting. Martellus Bennett's going to be gone.
Yep.
That's, I think, a foregone conclusion in Chicago. And Zach Miller was building that chemistry with old Jake Cuddy, and someone's got to catch the ball. They currently don't have Alshon
Travis
Jeffrey
Kelce
next
or
year.
Zach Miller? I think you'll take Kelce.
I'll take Kelce there.
All right, here's another name. Jimmy G.
Jimmy Graham. No way. No way.
I like this few word limitation. It's very like if you had one thing to tell somebody about a guy, it would be no way for Jimmy Graham.
You could go back on the tape. I was not a Jimmy Graham guy. I did not like his transfer up to Seattle. Now you take away his patellar tendon. There's just the case study is there, and this is a case study for a smaller guy, right? In Victor Cruz. What Victor Cruz do this year, coming off of a patellar tendon tear?
Nothing.
Nothing.
I think I lost a water bet because of him.
Yeah, it's the worst knee injury you can get right now because the medicine
It's
is
the hottest. The hottest new thing you can get right now.
You ain't cool unless you tear your patella tendon.
Actually, you're not cool if you tear your patella tendon. That's the truth of it.
So
It's a terrible injury.
Yeah, that is a brutal injury for Graham. So
we do joke
I
about
can't buy it.
injuries too much.
Yeah, because you have to.
Otherwise, you cry.
Right.
If you don't laugh, you cry.
Clearly, I feel it's not clearly. So I will make it clear. It's not funny that he got injured, but
No.
It's like it's America's Funniest Home Videos type of a thing where when we see people fall down, you laugh about it, and then you hope they're okay.
Look, and it's all in the context of fantasy football too. You to carry that over to real life, regular football, regular players. We're looking at it from a perspective of when you say no way, a lot of it has to do with the fact he'd be coming off an injury.
Yes.
No way fantasy wise. So 2 other names real quick. Ladarius Green.
If Antonio Gates is gone, very interesting. Very
Crockett Gilmore.
Yeah. I think Max Williams will start to emerge a little bit more next year. We know tight ends, it takes some time. So Crockett Gilmore is to me. And he was pretty much that way all year, that if you're in the right situation against a bad tight end pass defense, sure, you fire him up. But he's not a guy I'm going to draft or anything like that.
And then number 90 on the list, Rob Hausler. What are your thoughts on his future?
I hear the future's bright for Rob Hausler.
Oh, not a good.
I don't even know what team he's on. I think he's on Baltimore. I think he played for Baltimore week 17. Look this up.
I don't know how much time we really want to spend on Rob Hausler. Tight end for the Chicago Bears.
Oh, the Bears. That's what it was. The Bears.
Yeah.
He had
4 receptions for 33 yards.
A couple other names, since we're just throwing them out there. Dwayne Allen.
Sure. If he goes somewhere else, or even if he stays.
Even if he stays.
Yeah, big bounce back opportunity with Andrew Luck coming back.
Dwayne Allen was Tyler Eifert before it was cool.
It's true.
A guy who caught 2 passes a game, but one of them would be a touchdown.
You're right.
And also he got hurt a lot, which was kind of the Eifert.
You're going to have some other guys come back. Larry Donnell will be back.
Yeah, they've moved. It's Will Tye now. Larry Donnell's going.
We'll see. All right, I think that does it. You got any parting words? Could you handle the truth, Mike? Were you able to handle the truth?
I was able to handle the truth
without a tinkle pill. Are you okay right now?
You know what I'm not going to be able to handle?
What?
Is the when karma brings me an enlarged prostate next year, and I'm scrambling.
I just got you a convertible. You can't cruise around town.
I'll be very free.
All right, see you guys.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at www.thefantasyfootballers.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.